We are going to now have our official welcome from the New South Wales Minister for Emergency Services, the Honourable Jihad Dib. Jihad is the Minister, as I said, for Emergency Services, but also Minister for Customer Service and Digital Government and Minister for Youth Justice. In 2015, he was elected as the member for Lakemba and is now the member for Bankstown. Prior to entering Parliament, he was actually a school principal. He was the principal of Punchbowl Boys High School, former board member of the Australia Day Council of New South Wales, the New South Wales Police Commissioners Advisory Panel, and the SBS Community Advisory Committee. Has 3 children and a wife, Erin, who, according to my in-depth research, he actually met at university when he, and this is true according to my research, he walked into a university lecture theatre with a mullet hairdo and wearing an orange tie-dye jacket. I'm told it was love at first sight. Yep, sadly, he is not dressed that way today, but we are genuinely delighted to have the Minister with us this morning. Please welcome the Honourable Jihad Dib.
Well, thank you very much, Andrew. And it's good to see you did your research. It's a good story. And how could you not fall in love with a bloke wearing a tie-dye orange jacket? The really sad thing about it is I love that jacket so much. I really loved it. Erin hated it. Erin absolutely hated it. She thought it was really daggy. I thought it was super cool. And I got most upset when a friend of hers asked to borrow it for a fancy dress party. And I said, this is not fancy dress. This is real clothing. I don't know where that jacket is, but every now and then I do ask about it. I think Erin must have just got rid of it somewhere. But thanks so much, Andrew, and I really appreciate a good bit of research as well. Of course, I want to thank Uncle Warren and pay respects to First Nations people, and really hope that we do get moving forward with a voice. There's a really good path that we can walk together as Australians. It's a great honour, a great privilege to be here for the first time, and especially as the Minister. I was just thinking as I was sitting down, it's almost, I think it is 8 weeks to the day when Premier Chris Minns gave me a phone call, and I know exactly what I was doing. I was ironing a shirt because I remember I was upstairs doing some ironing and I got a phone call. And there's an interesting time when you win government and you're waiting for a phone call to see if you get to be a minister or not. And I asked some of my colleagues who had been ministers before, I said, what do you do? Do you ring up? They go, no, you wait for the phone call. So for the first time ever, I carried my phone everywhere I went. I made sure that it wasn't on silent because if anyone tries to ring me, then I miss a lot of calls because it's often on silent. And I got the call from him and he said, this is Premier Minns. I said, hey, Chris, how you going? Okay, things have changed. Jihad, I'd like you to be part of the ministry. I'd like you to be Minister for Customer Service and Digital Government. So that's cool. He goes, and I want you to be the Minister for Emergency Service. Oh, fantastic. That's great. I was doing that shadow ministry. And I want you to be Youth Justice. I said, oh, mate, perfect. I couldn't have asked for any better ministries, but it's actually 8 weeks to the day. Let's say I don't call him Chris anymore. I now call him the Premier, especially the other day when I needed to see him at a budget meeting. I was being as nice as I could. Anyway, the world's longest introduction. Now, on the program, apparently I've got a fair bit of time to talk, but if I finish a little bit early, I don't think anyone's going to be upset. I don't believe there's ever been a time when someone's sitting there going, you know what? I wish that bloke would just talk a little bit longer. So I promised that at the 15-minute mark, when someone breaks their oath that Andrew had given us, and people are faking that they're interested. I was an old school teacher. I can pick it pretty well. I'm just going to exit stage right. But I want to thank Scott and the team for having us here. And of course, Sharon and I met with them, and I've got to say the RFSA, as Shadow Minister, they'd met with me on a number of occasions. They'd written to me. They wanted some commitments. And as Minister, they did the same. And I will back in what Scott has said. They are absolutely championing for every single member and championing for the best that they can have for members of the RFS, those great volunteers. I want to, of course, acknowledge Peter McInerney, who's here, who's always going to be here anyway. Rob Rogers, Commissioner Rogers, also gave me a call. He does not sound well. I did ask him if it was fake or not, but no, he said he was really unwell. And then he coughed into the phone just to reassure it. But he is also another person who's an absolute champion. And I want to acknowledge a former schoolmate of mine. Kelly now goes by the name of Kelly Quand, who actually works with Pete. I don't know where Kelly is at the moment, but hey, Kelly. Kelly remembers me back in the old days when we were at Heathcote High School, and I was a much more humorous person with a lot less grey hairs back then, and certainly no bags under the eyes. I got so many bags under the eyes they were going to open a Louis Vuitton store on my face, but that didn't work out. Ladies and gentlemen, and I do want to, of course, acknowledge and pick up on something that Andrew had said. Andrew, I thought for a minute it was the Billy Joel song, "We Didn't Start the Fire." I didn't know there were so many things that had happened, so many crises. The one crisis that you didn't mention, though, is the crises that always face the St. George Illawarra Dragons. I mean, it's a tragedy. I represent the Bulldogs area, but I'm a Dragons fan because, we were born and bred in that area. And the Bulldogs, of course, give it to me all the time. But the good thing is they're not going so well at the moment, so it's okay. But I really don't understand how a couple of weeks ago, the St. George Illawarra Dragons were coming 15th. We won, and they end up coming 16th. I don't understand how a person was offered $1.something million, said he'd coach, and he decided not to. But it's a really bad thing. And I think my kids, as they grow a bit older, will be upset. I also, in her absence, want to acknowledge the former Minister, Steph Cook. And I've got a lot of time for Steph. And to that end, then I want to talk a little bit about Gurmesh Singh, the Shadow Minister. What you see on TV often is in Parliament, people sort of bulging eyes and, veins popping out and pointing fingers and froth and all that sort of stuff. That happens, but that's not, it has. And I've got to say, I've done it on occasion, and Gurmesh's done it on occasion. But that's not what politics is about. That's not the reason that Gurmesh and I went into politics. I went into politics like he did for that genuine belief that you want to make a difference. I had a pretty good career as a school principal. We were doing some really terrific stuff, but wanted to take that next step. And you can make a decision when you're in politics, and I made that decision with Steph, and I'll make it again with Gurmesh, and he and I did it together. Just because you're on opposing sides, it doesn't mean you need to oppose everything. You don't need to oppose each other. What we've got to do, particularly in this space of emergency services, is make sure that we get the best outcome for you and the best outcome for the people of New South Wales. And we've already had that discussion, and there's going to be things that we disagree with. But rest assured that Gurmesh Singh and I have had conversations, and we'll continue to do that. And we were friends before and will remain friends. We will work together to ensure that we do the very best for the emergency services, because you're made up of people like the people that we represent. You're made up of everyday people who actually want to make the world a better place, who give up your time, who give up time from your families, from your work, and from your businesses to make sure that you're the front line in defence. We'll talk for hours and hours about the heroic efforts, and there's parts of that in my speech. Those of you who saw my speech the other day or a couple of weeks ago in Dubbo know that I often walk up with a folder. Sometimes I put on glasses because I want to pretend that I'm more intelligent than I am, but I don't often read the notes. So if it gets a bit rambling, I apologise in advance. It's really good to reconnect for all of you after a couple of years. And Scott touched on this, and it was a topical point about 2 weeks ago. You are a fraternity. You support one another. You know one another. You're a family. And I love that you used the word family, because that was a really important thing. Families are pretty unbelievable. They're there for you all the time. They drive you insane, but they've always got you covered. And they always love you and always care for you. And they got your back as you have theirs. And this is a family. This is a big family of 70,000 people who all put on those outfits. They put on the overalls, go there, put out fires. But you do so much more than that. And we saw that over the last 2 years. We saw it in COVID, when there were other things that you played, that community leadership role, looking out for one another, supporting one another, delivering food hampers, checking in on people who were isolated. We saw it with the floods, where RFS was involved, not only in some of the rescue, but then the cleanup and the support efforts. We see that in people who volunteer for emergency services, because the one thing that you all have across the board is this determination to help, a desire to make a difference, and a sincerity with what you do. You don't do it for the pats on the back, and you don't do it for the citations, and you don't do it for the medals. They're really wonderful. but you actually do it because what you have in you is something that says, if I want to create a better society and I want to be part of a better society, then I need to do my bit. And for that, we will always be indebted, and we need to always be indebted. And the one thing that I assure you that you'll be constantly hearing from me is talking you up, never talking you down, always making sure that just as you've got the community's back, that I have your back, that I make sure that everybody knows that what you do is the thing that a lot of others don't. And I use this line often, that while people like myself and others are fleeing from danger, you're the ones who are putting yourself in the face of it. You're the ones who are at the front. And it takes a pretty extraordinary person to do that. And to think that many of the 70,000 are not getting paid, that speaks volumes of that. And often you are the heart of a community. I live in a very urban area, but there's many people in this room who come from areas where the community doesn't actually have much. Maybe there's an RFS, maybe there's SES. Often it's the same people. Sometimes there's fire and rescue. But you're also the same people who are involved in the local school P&C, in the canteens. You are the heartbeat of communities. And I think, as I said, that is something that's really, really special. But I talked about the connection because after a couple of years, you're reconnecting. You're seeing each other again. You're meeting new people, but you're reaffirming that commitment. And there's nothing more inspiring than coming to a conference, not because you get to hear from people like me, because there's nothing that I will say that's going to inspire you. But you actually find inspire. Actually, geez, I talked myself down a bit there. Thanks for no one clapping. I really appreciate that point. That's why I should be reading my speech instead of not reading my speech. But you actually get inspired from each other, from the stories. Share your stories, not as a way of big noting yourself or talking about how great you are, but as a reminder of the things that you do that often you take for granted. You don't see what you do as heroic, as special, as unique. But believe me, everything that you do is actually that fabric. And I think everything that you do is that Australian character that we talk about often, that sense of mateship, that sense of belonging, that sense of giving back, that sense of doing things for others. When I want to draw up characteristics of good people, they're the characteristics that I'm looking for. I'm not interested in how much you earn, in what car you drive, in how big your house is. What I'm interested is what's in here, in your heart and in your actions. And you do that every single day. I also want to make reference to a few things that were in that were in Scott's speech. You've got the RFSA who advocate very, very strongly. I think we met, as I said, before the election, some letters, and we've met post that. And there were some commitments that I made, and I'll honour those commitments. I'm also a realist, and I don't believe that I stand up here and say, we're going to do everything tomorrow. We're not going to do everything tomorrow. And I'd be fake if I told you that. And I think that I need to level with you. But we're working on those things. We're working on that safety. There's been incredible investment, and there is an acknowledgement of the previous government. I'm not going to stand here and take credit for something that somebody else did. We'll build on that, and we'll continue with those investments. But also things like that mental health support. Now, there is some mental health support, and there's money for mental health support. But my question was, why are we waiting for people to reach out to us? We need to be better at reaching out to people. We need to be better at making sure that we touch base with people and making it very clear that there's nothing wrong with asking for help. There's nothing wrong with, just saying, you know what, I'm doing it a bit tough. Because everyone here is a pretty tough person. No one wants to say, I'm struggling. Maybe you don't know that you're struggling. Maybe I don't know that I'm struggling at different times. But, if you get a chance, maybe make a phone call to an old friend. Check in with them, cup of tea, cup of coffee, invite them around to help you mow the lawn, whatever it might be. Whatever it might be, it's just maintaining that connection. And today is about maintaining that connection. As I said, there's the RFS has got over 70,000 members. You've been going for 100 years. There's not a town that I go to where there isn't an RFS. My brother-in-law, this is completely off the script now, sorry. My brother-in-law, who's incidentally coming up to my place today, which is why I'm going to take my time here as long as I can. He's a great bloke. I'm sure he's tuned into the webcam. My brother-in-law is a farmer, or he works on a farm. And a little while ago, I visited him at Grenfell. It was about this time last year. It was actually, no, it was a bit later because it was in the middle of winter. It was July. Coldest place I've ever been. Seriously, it was so cold. But then I realized he's living in a little tiny place and had a little fan heater. But that's not the story. I was, of course, got myself onto the motorbike and was exploring the farm. And lo and behold, I see a shed. And it was the RFS. And the RFS was literally the family who owned that farm and a few of the other families. And I thought, this is actually awesome that wherever we go, there is an RFS presence. You're there for the fires, but you're there for the accidents. You're there for the road crashes. You're there for the floods. You're there for everything. You're part of that community. And it's the one emergency service that is every single place. It doesn't matter. There's always a presence there. And that's of 70,000 people. And you've been doing that for over 100 years. We're living in a country and a state where we're seeing more and more natural disasters. We've always had floods. We've always had fire. We've always had things go wrong. But I don't know. I mean, I'm only 37. Why is everyone laughing at that? That wasn't even the punchline. I'm only 37 plus a bit more. But I can't remember such a quick succession of disaster after disaster after disaster. And we're very good at dealing with it. But I think what we can be better at is mitigation. And we're seeing some of that right now. We know that we've been worried about the floods, but there's a really strong potential that we're going to have a bushfire season and a serious bushfire season coming up. With all of that rain and the heat last summer, there's been a lot of undergrowth. We need to get onto hazard reductions. And I've been working with the RFS as to how we can get that done quickly. I'm really happy to hear that they're working on it. You know, the weather's not helping us, but it also means where we can work together, where we can push some money around and make sure that it needs to happen. Because I'd hate to be standing here in February and saying, you know what, guys, you did a really extraordinary job, but we made it a bit more difficult because we didn't get a chance to get the hazard reduction. So I've made it very clear to my colleagues that in the first instance, I'll be pushing as hard as I can to make sure that we do what we need to do, to make sure that those reductions are taking place, to make sure that I know while it might be an inconvenience to some people, that we need to go, let's inconvenience a few people now rather than worry about mopping up and, you know, telling people we're really sorry, but you lost your house or you lost your business or you lost your community. The memories of 2019 and 2020 sear really strongly in everybody's hearts and in everybody's minds. And there are people here, everyone here, who knows well and truly the impact of that. We haven't recovered, and we don't want to go into the next fire season saying we wish we could have. So we always need to make sure that we continue with that. We know the community spirit that you're involved in. I keep touching on that over and over again. Last Thursday night, I had a really tough day. Gurmesh asked a question in Parliament. It wasn't to me, but it was a really tough day anyway. But he got up and asked, but it was a really tough day last Thursday. It was a massive day. And I was exhausted. But I'd made a promise that I was going to go and join some of the RFS and the other emergency service personnel for a dinner because they were going to Canada the next day. And the RFS was leading the way with 30 out of 57 as part of a 200-strong contingent. And what was really wonderful was the excitement of members of the RFS who were going there. And we were going to Canada because we remember what it's like when we needed help and we asked for assistance and we got it from the Canadians. They need assistance. We're offering it straight away. Without any second doubt, we offered it straight away. But what I was most impressed with was the enthusiasm and that sense of commitment that every single person that I spoke to had, that sense of pride in wearing, you know, the badge of the RFS, but underneath the badge of being an Australian firefighter. Some were firefighters, some were controllers, some were logistics. We had people from the RFS, from the SES. First time the SES gets deployed to something like that. Fire and rescue, forestry corps, national parks. And they're doing such a good job and they're needed that there's been a request for more. And we'll do it, and we'll do as much as we can for a couple of reasons. One, as I said, we don't forget our friends. We don't forget who helped us. And two, and I hate to say this, two, it also helps prepare some of our firefighters for what we could be facing in a little bit of time. At the same time, the United States is having their wildfires going. And the great Marie Bashir is over there at the moment. Not Marie Bashir, the former governor. Marie Bashir, because I'm sure she would. Everyone knows Marie Bashir, the governor. I'm sure she would if she could. But the Marie Bashir, that, 737 large air tanker that we see on the news like a rescue to all of us, it's on its way there. But what it tells me is not only that we're good because we help others, but it also tells me that people know we're good and that our reputation across the world, your reputation, speaks volumes that people actually want the support and they will call for you straight away. A few months ago, or about a month ago, I was at St. Florian's out at Dubbo. And I made the call to St. Florian's Day and made the call to be there because it was a great opportunity to be there. And I was so impressed with the facility, and the memorial garden is poignant, beautiful, and respectful. And it's sad to see the names, but it's beautiful to see the names acknowledged and respected. So it was really terrific to be there. And we're acknowledging awards. Not one person who received an award got up and did a high five or, put their arms up, look at me, or did a bow. Not one. Every one of them, to a T, had the citation read, got up, walked very humbly, accepted it, and tried to get off stage as quickly as they possibly could. Now, I hang around with some people with big egos. Believe me, there's people that I know who do much, much less than that, who would like to pump themselves up a lot more than that. But again, that goes to the character. But there was one in particular about Philip Blackmore, who received the highest honour, the Award for Valour. And what I was impressed with Philip, and I'm just going to paraphrase what happened, because Philip was one of a few hundred who received awards. But there was a car that had been involved in an accident, leaking petrol, going to be on fire. Now, most normal people would go, you know what, I'm just going to leave that because it's dangerous, or I'm going to wait for somebody else. This guy didn't. This guy didn't wait for the somebody else. He was the somebody else. He knew that he would be taking a risk, but he took that risk to extricate the person from the car. As the car was lighting up, he was there. Now, that tells me what it really means to be a member of RFS. That courage, that bravery, but that risking your own life and limb to help others. And here's this one story of valour, but all of the other stories were of heroism and of valour. And I'm sure there are many untold stories in this room and across the state that we'll never know. And the person never wants us to know, but they did it because of those things that I keep talking about, that inherent sense of goodness that you have. My job, as I said, as the minister, is to support you. And I will do that, and I'll advocate for you all the time. I'll be frank with you as well, as I have in our meetings with the Commissioner, with the RFSA. Where there are things that I can do, I'll champion them like you wouldn't believe. And where there are things that I can't, I won't pretend to you that I can't. I'll just say to you, I'll work on it. I'll be straight up. Because I think what people want is for politicians to be straight up with them. I come from a world like Gurmesh, which is not a political world. Bit of my bio is there was no politics. I never worked for anybody as an MP. I never really went through the Young Labor system. I was a person who worked in the community, who believed in community, understood community, who went into Parliament because they believed they can make a change. And the moment that I stop making a change is the moment that I need to leave Parliament and let somebody else have a go. But coming from the real world, you know what real people want. And real people just want you to tell them the truth. And they want you to tell you what you can and what you can't do and what you can work on. Little things like visiting, say, Kunga, RFS, while I was up in the Northern Rivers. Small little RFS unit. And I met a bloke called Ron who'd been there for, been the captain for nearly 40 years. Those guys and girls know the place inside out. And they do so much more than fight fires. Little things like that mean a lot. I think they mean a lot more than a speech. They mean a lot more than a great, oration. And I promise you that every place that I go to, where I can, I'll be visiting your units because that's important. It's important for me to say thank you. And it's important for me to learn what you do. And it's important for me to understand what you do and to see firsthand the resources that you have and the resources that you need. I want to reiterate this. So here are some points that come up in our meetings regularly. How long have I been going, Andrew? Yeah, about 2 minutes. Yeah, cool. Because I was going to say there's a group up the back that's broken the oath. Just the gentleman up there, yeah, up there. You know, yep, he's broken the oath. No, he's paying attention now. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up. But there's some things that I do want to reiterate that are really important to say that I know are important to you. There's been a lot of talk about mergers. I said as the Shadow Minister, I'm not interested in a merger. I won't be merging. I made that very clear to all of the agencies. That's something that you don't need to worry about. For me, it's really important to protect the independence of the agencies. People join for different reasons. People can join both of them. Thank you. Okay, that gets me an extra minute, right? It's really important to that. But what I will say with that is I think there's a great opportunity for better interactions, interoperability. You already do it. I want to see more of that stuff, but you will not see a merger while I'm the minister. That will definitely not happen. The second thing that I want to talk about is I know that there's the issue that was touched upon as well in terms of the workers' compensation. And we've had those discussions and I continue to have those discussions with my ministerial colleagues. It's complex, but we're well aware of what it is and we're well aware of what it is that we need to do. And we're working towards a solution. And I believe there's a meeting with the Industrial Relations Minister in a few weeks that I'll also be joining in. So that's one of those ones that's being progressed as well as we possibly can. And also then in terms of the equipment that you have, there's been an investment. There will continue to be an investment. I can't promise you that every single person is going to get a new truck, every unit. You're not. But we will make sure that we can have the safest, best trucks that we can have, the safest, best materials that we can have. The issue about decontamination, I've asked for some research about ways that we can find a solution because there's something that happens with fire and rescue, for example, but that's not practical for some of the regional and remote towns that don't do that. So what are some of the different alternatives? What I do want to conclude with, and I don't even know why I brought my speech up, but I'll start my speech in a minute. What I do want to conclude with is I suppose you to take away the passion that I feel and the respect that I feel. And I know Gurmesh says the same. And it's probably unusual when a minister and a shadow minister are on the same page. There's a lot that we can be political about, but there's a lot of stuff that we don't want to be political about. We'll disagree on certain things. We'll disagree on certain things about emergency services. But the one thing, and Gurmesh can speak for his own behalf, but I'm confident the one thing that we 100% agree on is the fact that we will support you all of the way, that you're an integral part of our society, of our fabric, and that we will continue to support and make sure that we build the strongest emergency services. And we will continue to thank you for the service and to make sure that we provide you with everything that we can to be able to let you do your job. I want to thank you for having me today. It was I was meant to join you last night, but I couldn't make it last night because of a certain event down in my area. But thanks also for not going on the golf course and for coming into this session. Enjoy connecting with one another. Enjoy the next couple of days. Thank you for what you do. And do know that if you don't hear from us, it's not because we're not thinking about you, but there's a couple of people in Gurmesh and I who are your champions every single place we go. Thank you, Scott and the team, for putting this on. Have a wonderful day, everyone. And I'll see you out of your units very soon.